Welcome to Truly Terrified, Paranormal versus Physics, where we talk about some really weird stuff, and Joe the scientist explains how it's not possible, or maybe it is. I'm Lynn, and
I'm Joe.
Today we're going to talk about The Secret, also known as the Law of Attraction. So the Law of Attraction is a philosophy that claims that positive thoughts bring positive results, while negative thoughts bring negative outcomes. It's based on the belief that thoughts are a form of energy and that positive energy attracts outcomes that resonate with the same, like in health, love, wealth, and happiness. Is the law of attraction real? What do you think?
Well, one thing I always have to say when anyone says anything about energy is, like, people get these things in their head, like, they abstract a word based on a poor understanding of the word in its technical sense, and then they start attaching other meanings to the word. So, like, energy, I think a better word was whatever it was when we talked about like the ether or whatever is.
Oh, there was a funny word.
Is like, for instance, the luminous ether was a concept in physics that's basically been completely disproven. And that's a much better thing because it's explicitly saying there's this thing, it's all over the place, it's a substance we don't really understand the properties of, and it can vibrate. Vibration is important.
Okay, we will get into the physics of it later, but right now we're not going to go deep into that because I've got some quotes from some physicists that I am anxious to hear what you have to say about them. Okay, so law of attraction has generated a lot of attention. I was going to say attraction. A lot of attention in recent years due to books and films like The Secret and What the Bleep Do We Know? Did you watch What the Bleep Do We Know?
Well, I don't know. I can't remember. It's been a long time.
That was a long time ago. While it lacks scientific evidence for its claims and is generally viewed as a pseudoscience, there are enough people doing it and producing results that I sort of believe in it. It isn't a new idea that your thoughts will influence your life. When I was a young mother, my aunt sent me a little book called It Works. That was old even then, so that was really, really a long time ago. I followed the instructions and discovered it did, in fact, work. There are many books published starting in about 1920, which was the era of New Thought, and lots of people were coming out with different ways of thinking about things that told the same message. If you manage your thoughts, you'll attract what you want into your life. Okay, so here is one example that you were involved in where it seemed to work. Shortly after watching the movie The Secret, we were all in our car on our way to Earl to go to the restaurant where we worked, and at that time, that was about 18 miles from our home. Every day we drove by a privately owned museum, and there were never any cars, or at least not many, in the parking lot. So we decided to concentrate and imagine that the parking lot was full and the museum was busy. Do you remember this?
Yeah, I remember that.
And the very next day, as we drove by, the parking lot was full. And for a little while, anyway, just, some period of time after that, that museum stayed busy. So that was one example. Simple, little, kind of dorky thing. The other one is when you were a kid and you took hunter safety, they had a graduation ceremony, and at the graduation ceremony, they had a drawing for prizes. And you said to everybody that was there, sitting there, imagine me winning a prize. We all stopped what we were thinking, doing, and munching on to visualize you winning a prize, to visualize you being called up and getting a prize. And you won. You didn't win what you wanted, but you won a prize, which was that picture. It's a picture of a deer in the woods or something.
I can't remember the picture. I remember the frame.
Yeah, and the glass broke and we put plastic over it.
Yeah, something like that.
So those happened. That really happened. And you probably are completely like, it was just a random coincidence.
I mean, okay, so for instance, what I believe is any explanation you can come up with is just as good as any other explanation you can come up with. So for instance, here's one that doesn't require any woo-ness at all. There was an event at the wood carving museum or whatever it was.
Yeah, I think
I
that's
think it
what
was a museum of wood carving, and we one of our brains just happened. Our eyes glanced across a newspaper and saw it, but it wasn't recognized consciously, and then said that because it was the association. So it bubbled up to consciousness, and okay. There's an explanation. Because we can't like say we can't do anything to rule one out. They're equally as good, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And because you should probably always bias things you know you have lots of experience with, though that is much more likely than, you know, modifications to the entirety of the universe. But there are also exotic explanations, like models that could just explain it. Like if your mind can change the probability of the evolution of the universe at a quantum mechanical scale,
Mm-hmm.
if you can bias certain outcomes at a distance through time, it's really hard to say like, so like the problem with teleportation is absolutely everything in the universe has to go through intermediate points to get from A to B. Everything. There's no teleportation in time or space. So one of the problems with saying like, oh, you're influenced the probability of whatever, is the information has to go between the 2 points. So you're introducing a whole other ball game of like, oh, the information is coming back in time, and you know.
Okay, so is that quantum physics then?
Yeah, so that would be quantum, because quantum physics has such a huge range of possibilities, you know, the truth that it's like the universe could be any one of these different things. A lot can be prescribed to quantum physics. In this case, quantum physics, yes, many worlds interpretation with a few heavy modifications could predict that.
So I think that that movie, What the Bleep Do We Know? So it was
Is that the one where they had the ice and they like screamed at the ice or something, and ice formed different
I think
molecular shapes or whatever?
Yeah, so that movie was made in 2004, and it said that there was a spiritual connection between quantum physics and consciousness. Spiritual meaning something other than physical. That's all they meant by that.
Yeah.
They didn't mean like a God thing. I don't think so.
So again, I just have to say, like, it's so important. So we use words; they're very abstract, but the reality has like, you know, stuff in it, and it works particular ways as far as we can tell. So if you say like, for instance, spiritual, a lot of people will say spiritual. Do they mean spiritual as in emotional? Do they mean like as in your feelings about things? Or do they mean there literally is a different like mode of behavior of the entire universe? Nothing we know, nothing we can describe in how the universe works applies to that. You know what I mean?
No.
Well, I mean like, so that's why I say astral realm, because it breaks the thing saying spiritual or the you know, the astral realm sounds so ridiculous. So I'm using the word astral realm. I'm saying like it is like an alternate dimension. Things can move, things being like atoms and like waves and whatnot can move between what we can see and feel and the astral realm. You know what I mean? It's like I'm saying there are things, and there's like spaces, and there's...
Okay, so quantum physics was not your field of study in college?
Yeah, well, not particularly, but
okay,
I was very interested in it.
So proponents say the law of attraction is supported by theories from quantum physics that says that law of attraction, the law has an energetic and vibrational element of the principle that like attracts like. So that's what it all comes down to. So that's what they're saying. Like attracts like. I have a much more mundane understanding of what that is, and I don't think it's necessarily requiring a suspension of physics, you know. But let's talk about physics a little bit. Should we take a break?
Sure. Okay.
One of the founding fathers of quantum physics and a Nobel Prize winner, Max Planck, I think I'm saying his name
I think
right?
it's technically Planck, but people
Planck?
say
Planck.
CK, yeah.
Once said, as a man who has devoted his whole life to the most clear-headed science, to the study of matter, I can tell you as a result of my research about the atoms this much. There is no matter as such. All matter originates and exists only by virtue of a force which brings the particles of an atom to vibration and holds this most minute solar system of the atom together. We must assume behind this force the existence of a conscious and intelligent mind. This mind is the matrix of all matter. I don't know when he lived or
It's
when.
interesting. I think he was involved in quantum physics, I think. So
Yeah, he was the.
he's either talking about, he's literally saying he's saying he believes in panpsychism, which means consciousness is either everything or everywhere. Or he's saying, he's making a reference to how people, conscious people, maybe all consciousnesses, quote unquote, collapse quantum wave functions. And he's saying vibrational thing because at a very small scale, particles, everything are actually fields that are essentially oscillating in some way. Oscillating in the same sense that electromagnetic waves oscillate.
So you brought up the ice thing in the What the Bleep Do We Know?
Uh-huh.
And I've seen this in other places too, where supposedly people focused a particular intention or thought upon ice crystals and then examine them under a magnifying glass, and supposedly the crystals were different, and that's been debunked. That's not true.
Probably pretty easy to replicate.
Yeah,
I mean,
and it's just simply not true.
Yeah, not surprising.
There's lots of different factors that go into why and how ice crystals form and the patterns they create.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, they put words on the bottles.
Oh
right?
yeah, that's right. So the other thing that they had in that movie, and it's been a long time since I watched it, and I didn't find it particularly compelling because it was so over the top, full of kind of woo stuff, It just really.
Yeah, there's a point where you can detect this is like, it doesn't seem right.
Right. It seemed manipulative.
Yeah.
But one of the things, well, I don't know actually if this was even in the movie, but my sense of it from the movie was that you could, by thinking, make things happen. Like you could be wearing a red sock and then somehow, boom, it's green.
If you thought hard enough or something.
Yeah, I don't know. But I do think it's interesting that real experiments by real scientists have shown that plants react to, they react.
Well, I know when they play different kinds of music, they grow differently.
Yeah.
It may just be the vibration, particularly the magnitude of the pressure changes with the vibration.
So that's at a pretty gross, as in large scale. The vibration of music is a big scale vibration. What if thought did have a vibration? Not going into anything too crazy.
Meaning, I guess one of the things I've been saying is, like we're up here and like we're talking about concepts that are up here. So for instance, a tree. That's a tree and that's a tree, and okay, they're trees. A tree is abstract. If I said trees get beetles and then die, well, some trees don't get beetles. Like you can name particular species of beetles. And you can say beetles destroy the trees. And it's like they're actually going and chewing on the holes into the trees. And it's like they're removing material, and the material then, like the holes, block the flow of nutrients.
So in other words, you're looking for a relationship between the beetles and the death of the tree, and it's not what you think.
I'm saying like the more you expand the words you're using down to like the core reality, the meat and bones of it, like this is the gears of how the words are forming. We're using words to communicate, but there's an underlying reality to the words. I mean, that's how we can communicate, is words or like miming things or showing things. Reality doesn't give a shit about words as far as anyone can tell. So for instance, vibration. What is vibrating? You know what I mean? Like that is something that's really important. Electromagnetic waves, for instance, particular formulations of electromagnetic waves, electrostatic fields, magnetostatic fields, whatever they want to call them, are interacting, and their interaction actually propagates the fields mutually. And so it's a wave, it expands outward because it's propagating itself. And what is vibrating are the two fields, which have a directional component. So they're at every point they're pointing in a particular direction with some intensity, and they're moving, but it's actually kind of like this repetitive back and forth, and forth. That's the vibration. Sound waves, the pressure. If you had like a really high resolution probe, you could see, like you could graph it. The pressure is doing this this thing where it's going up and down, up and down, up and down,
Mm-hmm.
So like you can talk about an electron can do that. It can vibrate. What is vibrating with an electron is still an open question. If you take, this is the official answer. If you take the real and complex components of the electron's wave function, square them and add them together, or there's other mathematical ways of saying it, but essentially what you're doing, you get the probability of the electron being measured at a particular spot. And the probability is also kind of waving, although it waves differently. So it's vibrating, quote unquote, but it's vibrating differently. It kind of spreads out more than it vibrates. There is one thing in physics that could quote unquote explain or could connect the concept of vibration to super small scale, like fundamental waves, like the electron wave.
Mm-hmm.
And that is quantum coherence or decoherence. So essentially, how would I put it? So if I took an electron, I know exactly where it is, and I mostly knew which direction it's traveling.
Mm-hmm.
That will gradually I'll gradually know less and less about it as it goes further on. And it will behave more wavy as it goes on. But as it interacts with the environment, it just gradually gets like a muddled, not really even a wave, just a flat. It's not even vibrating. It's just a flat thing. So as things interact with the environment, they decohere, essentially. Which means, in terms of vibration, decoherence is like you're adding lots of different vibrations all together and it just evens out to zero. Like, for instance, if you had sound coming from this direction, sound coming from that direction, sound coming from this direction, and it would just kind of sound like white noise. It wouldn't sound like anything meaningful. So the interesting thing about quantum coherence is you can have superpositions that behave very strangely. So the electron could be over here, could be over here.
Yeah, I think that's what they kind of alluded to.
Yeah, so the meat and bones of the words are actually more complicated. And so if we use words like vibration, whatever, we're missing a lot of the details and probably outright wrong about some of the details. So it's just like the tree thing. Some trees don't get beetles,
Mm-hmm.
Well,
I do think it's interesting that their whole premise in What the Bleep Do We Know was that quantum physics explained this, and yet quantum physics doesn't explain it. Quantum physics, perhaps you could say, well, maybe,
So there's two really interesting maybe avenues how quantum physics could produce really interesting effects like that. Is one, if what's called the Copenhagen interpretation is true, then tiny particles aren't choosing where they end up. They look like waves, but when we measure them, they're literally ending up at random spots. And the randomness, the information that's choosing where they end up, that looks random to us, might be anything. Maybe it's God,
Okay, I see. Yeah.
So But the many worlds interpretation is probably more believable, and it's certainly more lower level. It explains it, why that would happen, and it's more or less that where the electron ends up is dependent on your perspective, but it's your perspective as also a wave function, or a wave that's in multiple places at once, which is strange. Here's another interesting idea that I think goes along with it. There are two ways to appear to make a change to the universe. It's really interesting. This concept applies very generally. There's two ways to appear to make a change to the entire universe. One, you make a change to the entire universe, or two, you actually make a local change, but you make also an equivalent change or some change in the observer, so the point of reference. That's what makes it an apparent change to the whole universe.
Oh, I see.
So, for instance, let's say the sky just turned green, and everyone says, "Oh, the sky's always been green." There's two ways that could happen. The sky actually changed green. Everyone's brains changed to the equivalent version where the sky really has always been green for them. It really wasn't 5 minutes ago, but now it is really green. Or two, something in your brain says green and blue are switched, and the words and the colors of the sky. So there, you can't tell the difference. In reality, there's going to be little cases where, edge cases where you might be able to determine which it is. But it's possible to do it 100%. You can't tell which. Was it the whole universe changed, or was it just me that changed, and optionally me and a little bit outside of me? If you see, like I was saying, teleportation does not happen as far as anyone can tell. There's no information that travels instantly across, so like you can't teleport in space, you can't teleport in time. If you see what appears to be teleportation, it may actually be your perspective that's suddenly changed. So one sort of example of that is if you imagine so you can make a flashlight beam on the surface of a distant object go faster than the speed of light. Yeah, I mean, there's nothing stopping where the beam ends up going faster than you just wave it across the moon. It's going faster than the speed of light. No individual object is going faster than the speed of light. It's just that you are seeing a lot of different things happening. Your perspective is that.
Yeah, I think it all does come down to perspective.
Quantum physics would say if your socks suddenly change, it's you. The information in your brain has suddenly changed in a fundamental way,
Yeah. So do you think that the way they presented it in those movies was just a marketing ploy, or do you think they really believed that that's how it happened?
I think that, one, the mere fact that it was a movie means they were making money off of it.
Yes, they made lots of money.
Two, I think they probably believed it to some degree. I mean, regardless whether or not it's a real phenomena, whatever the phenomena is, they talked about a lot of different things.
Yeah.
It's easy to believe a lot of things vaguely. I believe in a soul. What is a soul? Beats me, but
Yeah. Yeah, I think a lot of people got sucked into that. I may be wrong on this, but I believe that Scientology kind of believes something similar, because births I've been at, well, one in particular that I'm thinking of, they had a big book and it had and they had a name for it, like scripts or something. And they were supposed to influence your world by doing whatever was in this book. It was probably...
you do them and it influences?
Yeah, it was like Dianetics.
Sounds like prayer.
Well, except here was one example, and this is one stuck with me because it had to do with the birth. So this lady, she's in labor. Labor is not easy, and she was having a hard time. And her husband's got the book out, and he leafs through it, and he finds the instructions for what to do. I don't know whether it was for labor or something else, but he hands her something. I don't even think they spoke words, honestly, because I think that was one of the things. We weren't allowed to speak to her while she was in labor. And so she was supposed to hand this object back to him. And repeatedly, she would hand the object back and he would give it to her. And then she would hand it back because she was supposed to be releasing this baby and that this would put her brain in alignment with releasing. And there might be something to that from a psychological standpoint.
Yeah.
But I don't think that's really from a physics or spiritual standpoint. There was another lady who was in labor who was also a Scientologist, and she told us we couldn't speak to her while she was in labor, and she really needed someone to support her, and we couldn't speak to her because our speaking words to her would interrupt the energy that she needed to manifest her birth, because our words would be counter to the experience that she was supposed to be having. So I think that what happens when people do things like The Secret or What the Bleep Do We Know is that they try and make something marketable for the masses, and it ends up diluting a bunch of people.
Yeah. Cults do the same thing. Like any cult, you know, not just those cults,
Right.
but like any cult does the same thing to some degree. There's like a more or less obvious pattern to it. In those things they do, obviously, no matter, even if you're in a cult, you just look at a different cult and you'll agree with me that some of the things they say are obviously not true. Obviously not true to someone who's not in the cult, you know.
Right.
So if you're in it and you're kind of already are thinking along those terms, I don't know. I just think it's really easy to be deluded.
Yeah.
And then
And it's hopeful. You know, I think
Yeah.
everybody wants hope.
yeah. Well, you want fucking hope. How about quantum immortality?
You keep saying that and you just never talk about it.
Quantum immortality means
No, you can't talk about it now. You always do this. I know the law of attraction works because it's worked for me many times, and I think it could work for anyone. But I think there's a more down-to-earth and practical reason why it works. And I think you're really going to enjoy next week when we talk about that practical reason. So next week is part 2 of The Secret and the Law of Attraction, and our contact information is in the show notes. So if you have anything you want to tell us, a story you want to share, please send it to us. Share, subscribe, and leave a review wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks for listening, and never be so terrified you can't run.